Hi, it's Anne. Thanks for stopping by. So I was watching Gayle Agostinelli, as we all do, earlier this week, and she had the most adorable project. They were these little painted frames. And they're thin, they're just on book page. There's several steps to doing them, but I think they're the cutest embellishments for any kind of a junk journal piece. They would look great on a pocket. I put this little one on a journaling card. They don't, they're not thick, they're not bulky, but I just think they look so sweet. And there's lots of different directions you can take them. So I just was super excited, and I asked Gayle if I could do my own version on this channel, and she very generously said yes. But I will link to Gayle's original because it's always fun to watch Gayle. I have made a few changes just because I'm kind of lazy in some ways. So we'll walk through those. But I thought you might be interested in making some little paper frames with me. I'm going to set these little guys aside. This is a good project to do. Obviously, it's very messy. I have my backdrop down, and I have all kinds of paints, and I scrubbed as much as I could of as much of the paint off my fingers as I could. Obviously, I didn't get it all off. It's a little bit on the messy side. But what the heck, we're used to that. We're just going to start with a book page. This is a good project to do because you do need to let different layers of paint on these book pages, or ink if you choose to use ink. You could certainly do that too. It's good to really let them dry between the layers. So this is a great project to do, if it's laundry day, or if you're making soup day, you do a couple of steps, let your ink or your paint to dry while you're off chopping onions or folding laundry or putting in another load or something like that. So it's not the type of project you're going to want to do if you only have 45 minutes to craft that day. You're going to want to spread it out. At least I did. But we're going to start with a book page. Of course, I just always love my dictionary pages. So we're going to start with this. Gayle used for these little painted frames, she used some little templates, and she had kind of cobbled together her templates. The templates were, I don't know if they were paper or what, but she taped various little rectangles. Oops, I've got these things stuck together. She had various rectangle shape square or rectangle shapes cut out of her template material, and she kind of cobbled them together. I decided to make one because I didn't want to mess with a whole bunch of them. She's been doing this literally for years, so she has collected a bunch of these little triangular shaped frame templates. But since this is the first time I've done it, I thought, well, I'm just going to cut this one out. I will show you. This was my first mistake because I decided to make these out of I guess this was a file folder, you can see here. And using a wet mixed media material, like acrylic paint, it was peeling off. It was not really the best template to use. So after I used this a couple times, as you can see that I did, I made myself another template out of, I just went to my office supply stash, and this was a little file folder divider that I wasn't using. And I thought, since this was a plastic material, I probably wouldn't have quite as much trouble with the template sticking to my paper. So let's go ahead and begin with this, and I will kind of show you how I'm doing this. I really like Gayle's idea. Of course, I love using gesso, and I love Gayle's idea of having gesso in sort of form the backdrop of these little painted squares. I keep bringing these in, but this little white center portion that you have here, that has gesso on it, and so it really gives a nice light, almost a glowy kind of center to my little framed painted frame here. Gives a nice surface for stamping on at the end and kicks back the intensity of that text a little bit. So 3 very good things that the gesso does for us here. I'm going to I put this through my die cutting machine, but I also made one just using just cutting out rectangles using an X-Acto knife. So that worked pretty nicely. But this is, I'm just going to washi tape it down to the top here. And oh gosh, I have all kinds of noises here in the basement today. Sorry about that. You can see this is one of the little pieces. Oh, I guess it was this one here. Am I in frame here? Yeah, I guess I am. I've just been using this as a little palette to put my gesso on, and these are just makeup sponges. This is kind of dry from doing it earlier, but easy to use again. Put a couple of drops of the gesso here. Actually, I'm going to wipe off that top and get it to be usable. And then I'm just going to put that gesso down here. Probably one of the most used mixed media supplies that I have in my craft room is the bottle of gesso, and I do use the Liquitex. That's the air filter going off here in my basement. I don't know if it's picking up on spores I'm putting in the air, getting out all these book pages or what, but there we go. Now I'm kind of filling in. You know, you can paint it. You can, use one of these things if you want. You can smear it on with a card if you wish to. There we go. Okay. This does not take long to dry. And the other steps I'm going to want to dry between layering, but I'm not too concerned if there's just a little bit of moisture left in this gesso, because I'm going to add some acrylic paint to make my frame. And if it picks up a little bit of that white to blend in with it, I really am fine with that. I really love seeing how Gayle said, get out these makeup sponges. I have very few of these left, so I kind of keep using them over and over. This one I was using earlier. What color do I want to use? I don't think I want to use the green again because I have quite a bit of green here. Why don't I use some of... I've been using the top of a cottage cheese carton for a palette, but I think I'm going to use another one of my little cutouts from this template here. Should I? Yeah, I'll use this blue. I'll use this blue. And because this is dried, it probably would not bother the blue, but I'm going to use the trick of just cutting off that, and I have a nice fresh edge, and I will use that until I can use it no more. I love these little, they're just a nice size, these little guys. Wipe that off there, and I have it on my usable painting surface. And you just kind of go around the edge and just pounce. And leave some of that white in the middle. Get a nice uneven edge. Some of your coverage is going to be a little thicker in some spots than in other spots, and that's exactly what you want. It's just so pleasurable to do this. As soon as I saw Gayle do it, I said, oh, that is right up my alley. It looks like I didn't put quite enough blue on here, so I'm going to add a little bit more. Wouldn't this be easy to do, though, with watercolor? Just swish a little watercolor there. You could maybe use, in fact, maybe we'll try that. You could use a little bit of ink, too, if you didn't feel like getting out your acrylic paints. I haven't done this before. but we're going to check this out. I'm going to pull out a little acrylic block, and here's all my nice colored inks here. I could get out my distress ink, but I think I'm just going to pull out one of my Stampin' Up! Inks just to try a different medium. That acrylic block, I think, is going to work. I think I have some glue stuck on it. Not a very juicy pad, but we'll juice it up a little bit here. And close that up, and let me pull out another. I'm down to my very last little bit of makeup sponges that I've been using in the craft room. But we use what we have, don't we? Okay, that's pretty light. I'm going to, I think, come in with something a little bit darker. Or maybe I'll pull out a little bit of this red. That's going to give me a little more dye there. It's fun to think of all of the different ways that we have of adding color to paper and going ahead and using them just to see how they're going to look. Okay, not super intense, but we'll just see how it looks. That's why we experiment, isn't it? I'll do this last little bit up here. I got some into that corner, but that's okay because we're going to be putting a little bit of outline in there. Yeah, this may not be the best. We're learning together here, aren't we? It's worth it just to experiment and learn. There we go. I didn't end up with very much white of the gessoed section in there. Yeah, I think I'm liking how the acrylic paint works as opposed to the Stampin' pad. Now, instead of letting this dry in place, because this is plastic, it should lift fairly easily. So I'm just going to pull this up. And there's the basis of our little frames. So I'll pull this off and set that aside. And these are not dressed up yet. One thing I'd like to show you, though, one thing that I did, pull this, let this dry over here. I had several instances when I was making earlier batches that I did all of my pouncing, and let's just say that I had some, let's pretend that this is what was left over. I thought, oh, my template is there drying already. I don't want to waste this. I came in with a just a blank page, and let's see, do I have, yeah, leave that underneath. And I thought, oh, I just want to, kind of wipe it off here. But I decided to keep pouncing. And this is something you can do if you don't want to use a template at all. It's just an alternative way to make this, because since you're pouncing with this little makeup sponge, you can get pretty close to what you want in terms of making these little frames, these little square or rectangular shaped frames. So this is just on a bare naked book page. And since it's a dictionary page, those columns guide your eye very easily. And I was able to use, kind of judge how much I had left. These are bigger than some of my other ones. So that's another base that you can use for these painted frames. And I just pounced until I ran out of paint. So that's cute too. Now we're going to go on to our next step, because this is something that would dry while I went to go, you know, chop onions for the soup or something like that. What do I want to do next? I think I'm going to bring this in. And then I'll bring in one of the pounced, the freehand sort of pouncing sorts of frames. I have here handy a bunch of my little stamps, and let's just pull out a few that I think might lend themselves to this. Oh, here's that cat. That's cute. Yeah, that's a good place for me to start anyway. And I like to use, I think that's maybe not going to be right. I like to use VersaFine ink for this kind of stamping purpose. And I want to bring in a little foam pad because I like, if I'm stamping, I like there to be a little bit of cushion underneath. That's something I picked up from my card making days, which I'm still a card maker. I talk like those days are long gone. They're not, but I do spend much more time in junk journaling and mixed media rather than card making. And I'm just going to stamp right here. And that did not pick up very well, did it? I think I'm going to stick with it, though. It's always a little bit of a gamble. I don't know how this stamp ended up with a little rhinestone glued to it, but it fell on it somehow. Okay, that's better. That is better. And let's see, what about something smaller, something like that? Yeah, even Gayle had a few of her impressions that came out a little bit fuzzy. That's why we make these in great quantity. Yeah, might have to try that on a different color. Here is, I'm spread out so much here. I'm afraid I'm not giving you a very well-centered experience here. That looks cute. That looks cute. I need something a little bit horizontal there. I might use two. I have this little Adirondack chair. That might be nice for a camping journal. And I think I'm going to put two side by side to kind of fill up that space. Okay, that's not the greatest. It's a little bit large for that space, but that's okay. That's why we kind of keep experimenting. Okay, I'm gonna set that aside because I really want that ink to dry before I do a final cutout of that. Let's come back to this sort of, this is one that I used up the extra ink for and just went onto the naked page. I wonder if I want to add, because I went to the ungessoed page, I wonder if I want to add a little gesso. I might do that. So you don't have to do things all in the same order here. You can just kind of play. Oops, and got a fair amount of gesso on that, so it looks like there's some gesso I'm going to want to be using up. All right, we'll kind of see how that looks and do that pouncing. Don't know that I love that so much. I think I needed to be a little bit lighter with my gesso application. There, that one's better. That one looks a little messy, but kind of pulled out all my spring colors. I was realizing, because I haven't done any mixed media for a while, most of my acrylic paints seem to be sort of fall colors, you know, kind of the rich maroons and the brown tones, which I love. But I'm kind of in a spring mode right now. So I was looking more for the pastels and the kind of Eastery colors. See if I can even that out a little bit. Yeah, I think once this dries, I think that might be nice. And I like that we've knocked back that text just a little bit. See how these look when they dry. And let's see. Here is something else I wanted to try. So let's do this together. That's not going to dry too quickly, so I thought, what if I wanted to skip the step where I had the template down and now where did I even do with my template? I thought it was right here. Anyway, what if I wanted to skip the step where I put the template down and I did the gesso through the template? What if I wanted to just have a completely gessoed book page? Because I use those a lot for background things. And that's what I would do. How can I lose something that is right? I was sitting right here. I have not gotten up. How in the world did I lose that? I don't know. I am going to have to stop and look for my template. I'll be right back. It was, of course, sitting right here. It was blending in with all the paintiness of its surroundings. So anyway, it took me all of like 2 moments to find it. But that happens when the desk gets a little messy. Anyway, so this is, set these aside. This is another background page, but I already have the gesso on it, and I just did the, you know, where you put some gesso on a card and then just drag it over. I do that a lot. Shall I do more blue? I have blue on this, so let's go ahead and do, I'm getting a lot of blue though. Maybe I'll do this kind of camel color. And I'll spend one more of my little foam pads here. There we go. That ought to be enough. And maybe, you know what, maybe I'll use a different tool this time just so you can see how different tools work, because you might have some of these little brushes. I might do something completely different. I have this little onion bag here, and I use this when I do gel printing. But I wonder, this is almost like it's going to give us a stenciled effect. Haven't done this before. We're just going to see how that works. Again, it's worth experimenting. This is what playing, you know, having time to play at your craft desk. This is how that works out. Because you can end up with some stuff that, you know, it goes immediately into the trash bin. Or you can end up with some stuff that is a complete and delightful surprise. And it's just worth that exploration. You know, that's That's what innovation is about. I used to work at Corning Incorporated in Corning, New York, and I was in communications, so I was not in the innovation side of things, but I worked with a lot of wonderful scientists, you know, and helped them with some of their communications. You know, if they needed to do a customer pitch, or they needed a, you know, a press release or something, you know, a white paper or something written about something that they were doing, an executive speech, something at a conference that they were giving, where they, you know, wanted more, you know, less technical ways of communicating. And I would often get called in to help with those things, and became very good friends with a number of wonderful scientists. In fact, a scientist and an engineer that Dan and I became very good friends with, they are coming to visit us here in Portland in May. So we're very excited to see Sue and Amy. Anyway, one thing I just really learned from them was just the importance to have time, you know, for them it was time in the lab, you know, to just experiment, to see what was going to happen with different combinations of things. All right. We do not know what's going to happen here, but I think I'm happy with that. If only I could find a place to put my onion bag. There we go. Once I get the stamping and the little extra outlining done on this, I think I'm going to be really happy with that. Time to set this aside though, because let's do a little more. Let's go back to this piece. I think that's, yeah, the gesso dries pretty quickly. Okay. Set that somewhere where I won't lose it. We're taking a wandering path today, aren't we? I'm going to come in and do some outlines because I really like Gayle's idea of drawing outlines around these things before she cut them apart. And I think sometimes it's nice to draw the outlines even before you do the stamping in the middle. I did this stamping because I wanted you to be able to see that straight away about how that was going to look. But actually, I probably should have done this last and done the outlining around. Why? Because this VersaFine ink that I use for my stamping tends to smear. It takes a while to dry, particularly on a gessoed surface. Anyway, we're going to leave the stamping for this particular page last. Going lots of different directions here today. Let me go ahead and draw. I'm just using a fine liner pen, and I'm going to hand draw some edges here, and we want them wonky. We want them kind of like doing a double frame there. There we go. We want them looking like they're roughly drawn. Anyway, just having time to play like this, I think it's just so important. You just discover really unusual, really wonderful things, especially when you're using what you have. I think you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Why don't I just do these two? And let's see, in the interest of efficiency, let's see if I can come all the way across here. I'm not leaving a whole lot of purple at the top of this one, but I think I'm going to be okay with that. I think Gayle is much more precise at drawing than I am, but even she said you want to do it in a hurry. You want it to look like it's hand drawn. There we go. Let's tear these apart and then we'll stamp these at the very end and set them aside to dry so they don't smear. Now, this is the one where we did the gesso on the top. Whoops, and but you can see there's just lots of different ways that you can put these together. I have to come in with the scissors here. Is this going to be too narrow for me to rip? We'll find out. Oh, no, that one's okay. How nice this is going to be to have a whole little envelope or pouch filled with these little creatures. All ready to add, to embellish a page, to embellish a pocket. Yeah, I'm not totally convinced that my efficiency steps here are really all that efficient. But you know, you can experiment. Just like the great scientists do, and the great artists as well. It is fun to use these spring colors, though. We've got tomorrow the big annual spring fling for our neighborhood seniors group that we support, and it's a spring soup luncheon, and everybody gets very excited about it. It's going to be really fun. It's a potluck. People have been cooped up all winter. Not that our winters are, this has not been a terrible winter here in the in Oregon, at least. But still, it's going to be nice to get out, wear our lighter weight coats. All right, I'm going to give this guy another chance. He's inked up a little more heavily here. All right, what will it be like? Not the greatest. I think this guy is going to go back in the drawer. It's okay. It's okay. But it's not fabulous. I'm going to set him aside because that ink is going to take a while to dry. Let's try, let's see, this key. Yeah, that's going to almost fit in here. I want something a little horizontal. Oh, yes. Isn't that nice? Yes, I really, really like that. What else do I want to try? Seems like I had a bicycle stamp. That might be maybe not so great. I think that has the same level of detail that this dragonfly does. I have a feeling that bicycle might disappoint me. I shouldn't be projecting my low expectations on the poor little bicycle stamp. Let's do one more here. There we go. Yeah, these look really cute. I'm going to come back in, and this is a sheet that I made yesterday. Actually, here's a couple of sheets that I made yesterday, but I think I'm going to tear these apart, and we'll just have a look and see how these are fully dried. I actually made these before dinner yesterday, and I could hear Dan upstairs getting dinner almost finished, and I was like, oh, I do want to do just a little bit of stamping and let these things dry. I love this turquoise color. I think it looks great with the black. So you can see, you know, watercolor would be great. Perhaps my choice of the dye-based inks was not the best choice, but you know, play around. It depends on the paper you're using. It depends on the brand of the ink that you use and the type of ink. Maybe Distress ink would have worked better. In fact, I'm willing to bet Distress ink would have worked quite a bit better than that dye-based ink. I just have so much of the dye-based ink. I wanted to give it a chance. Oh, these are just so cute. I can't wait to start using them. And you know, I was thinking that if you used if you were doing, you know, if you had maybe a mixed media cover or something on a junk journal and whatever, and you were using some acrylic inks in decorating that cover. I mean, I'm sorry, acrylic paints. What if you use those same colors? Let's say we're using pink and this lime green and a, you know, purple or something like that. If you had these little painted frames, a whole variety of them that you could put to decorate things throughout that journal, what wonderful continuity that would give you in terms of color, in terms of design, in terms of the whole vibe of the journal. It really would be fun. Well, Anne, my tearing is a little rubbish today, is it not? There we go. Okay. Well, I hope you can see how much fun I had doing this. And again, I did have some that I did ahead of time that I came back to after they had a chance to dry. Particularly the stamping, you don't want to do on anything that is even the slightest bit wet. I don't think, anyway. Okay, so this batch one that I did, I gotta say, I think I like the one that has the white frame all the way around. I think I prefer this style using the template to, you know, the one that I just did the pouncing all over the naked page. This one, I think I did on I think there's some gesso underneath there. I don't know. This is another one that I did yesterday. I might tear these out and put them on a, maybe a dark background. I'm just going to tear out one and we'll see how that looks. Because I do think you want that sense of there being a frame. And the acrylic paint, I feel like it does need, it needs something behind it to really frame it. Now this doesn't have the lines drawn on it, but maybe if I used, do I have anything black here? I do over here. Made a reach for that. If I used a little piece of black cardstock here, that could mount nicely there. And that's a different kind of look. Let me just go ahead and quickly glue that down just so we can see what that's going to look like. I don't want to keep you forever. You want to be hunting up your acrylic paints and doing this, I have a feeling. Or going over to see how Gayle did hers. And she was a little more successful, I think, than I have been. But I think she would approve of me playing a little bit here. Okay, there's a different look, but that can work nicely, can't it? Okay, and look again, look how cute this whole thing works out on a journal card. Well, it's a little bright, but on a nice, bright, whimsical page, I think that'd be great. Enjoy this, guys. Get in there and play, experiment, have fun, innovate, use whatever you have on hand, and see what you can come up with for these great little embellishments. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.